Hi everyone, my name is Rehgan Avon and I'm so excited to be opening up the conference for all of you today. What a great opportunity to get together virtually and talk about things that we really care about and are passionate about in technology and how to support each other. I absolutely love this theme of empowering yourself and empowering your community, and I'm really excited to talk to you all today about architecting your careers in the technology field. So before we get started, I just wanted to mention that these types of virtual conferences are extraordinarily important to keep us all together and connected during this time. And even though we can't get together in person, this is a really good opportunity to stay connected and meet new people. So as you go throughout this conference, reach out to other people, get connected, follow up with them, set up meetings, and really engage, because I know it can be really hard from a virtual perspective to stay engaged and listen to people talk. But ask questions and think about how the different talks apply to you and your career. And along the way, we're going to address a lot of different topics. I saw the schedule. There's a lot of amazing speakers. So, please take advantage of this opportunity to connect, even if it is just virtual. And with that, I'm going to get started on my talk. So today I'm going to be talking to you about architecting your career in technology. Like I said, my name is Rehgan Avon. I am the CEO and co-founder of Ikonos Analytics, and I'm also the CEO and founder of Women in Analytics. So I want to talk to you a little bit more about who I am and why that matters in the topic that I'm going to discuss today. As mentioned, Ikonos Analytics is a company that I co-founded this year with my co-founder, Allie. And we do a lot of architecture, process architecture work, technology architecture work for advanced analytics and AI. And then Women in Analytics is a community that I started about 4 years ago. And we host conferences, we have an online community, and it's a really great way for like-minded people to stay connected with each other. I also teach part-time for a company called Cognitier. I teach introduction to data science courses. I teach intro to Python courses. It's a really great way for me to continue gaining depth in those areas and teaching other people, something I'm super passionate about. And finally, on that note, I want to move into some of the personal pieces about myself. So I have a Shiba Inu who I'm obsessed with. Her name is Sheila. And she definitely has an intense personality. So if you ever see those memes, that's definitely what they act like. I also love camping and I love being out in nature. And so if I have the opportunity to hike, primitive camp, it is something that I'm really passionate about, as well as traveling and seeing new places. And finally, I'm also a rescue diver. So I do a decent amount of scuba diving, as much as I can in Ohio, and try to travel as much as I can to different places and see the different kind of ecosystems underwater. So I'm a rescue diver, so that's something that I'm really passionate about and will continue to kind of advance and master that skill probably for the rest of my life. So moving into the topic at hand here. So I wanted to take something that maybe we're all familiar with and we're all really focused on day to day and apply that to how we can advance our own careers in this field of technology. And so I think about the fact that I do a lot of design and architecture, and I wanted to apply some of those same concepts to how I've navigated my career so far, challenges that I've experienced, and how maybe those same things that we focus on all the time can be applied to advancing our own careers. And so I wanted to talk about these kind of 6 core topics, which is really determining your goals and your KPIs, measuring performance, identifying dependencies and constraints, assessing feasibility and managing and identifying risks, and finally experimenting and iterating. So those should be common topics to everyone in attendance, and maybe you think about them from the technology perspective, but they can absolutely apply to your own career, no matter where you are in your career, if you're just starting out or if you're really advanced into your career. So let's start with determining your goals and KPIs. And this can be a really broad topic. There's lots of exercises and lots of materials online that you can review and go through kind of goal setting. But I wanted to talk about it in a couple of different ways. So goals can be very, very different for different people. And this is something that I've learned along the way in my own career. You kind of have this assumption that everyone has the same goals in their career, but as you start to advance and meet new people, you realize that that's not the case. For example, for me, my goal in my career is to master my skill. I get a lot of fulfillment out of mastering something and becoming an expert in something. And then being able to practice that skill and be able to apply it and make a difference and changes. And so for me, impact and fulfillment are kind of my top priorities. But there are also other aspects of your career as well, like money, title, influence, and those things can be very important to people too. So keeping in mind what you care about and how that applies to your career is going to be extremely important to keep in mind. Especially as you're evaluating new opportunities and you're deciding what your next steps are going to be in your career. There's a book called Mastery by Robert Greene that I actually really love. This whole concept of mastering a skill is really, really interesting. You think about this in terms of sports and people who are incredible at what they do. My family personally really loves martial arts. A lot of people are involved in martial arts, and that is a discipline that there are actual masters in. And so you think about how much time and energy and focus and discipline are associated to mastering that skill. There's a lot of goal setting and a lot of structure in place to get advanced in that area. And so having a good structure of those goals is extraordinarily important. It'll help you navigate your different career path opportunities. And really kind of discovering what your calling is, because at the end of the day, fulfillment is really going to be key for you to remain happy and engaged in your career and not feel like it's just this kind of 9-to-5 thing that you go home and they're two separate things in your life. There's definitely a balance of work life, but going to work and being excited about what you're doing and being able to advance yourself into that particular area is very, very rewarding and fulfilling. The next aspect of that is it's not just enough to be really good at what you do. You have to be able to put yourself in scenarios and situations to find opportunities or create them yourselves. And so this is the aspect that I like to emphasize as well, which is community and your network, meeting new people. I can't tell you how many opportunities that I have come across or created because of people in my network, whether it's sitting down at a coffee and brainstorming about something and thinking about how I can generate an opportunity, or it is reconnecting with someone and maintaining a strong relationship that I admire and that has an impact on my career. Those types of things are really important to set aside time for. And so if you're really good at something, that might be great. But if you can't connect with other people and find those opportunities and select the right opportunities and execute on that, then that skill is not going to take you very far. And so there is this kind of more abstract idea of having a very strong network that you can rely on and that you can connect with. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. And we often don't place enough emphasis on that. You hear about like networking, communities, and so on, but it's mostly an afterthought. But later in my talk, you'll start to understand why there is such a high emphasis for me personally on community and networking. And all of these goals are great, but if you can't measure the performance of them, how will you ever know what progress looks like for you? And so there are a couple of things that I always keep in mind when I think about goal setting and setting realistic expectations for myself, which is really defining what those milestones are. Is it learning, a very specific skill? Is it connecting with a certain amount of people in a certain area of focus? But really defining what those are and what they mean. And then creating timelines around that. If you don't have a goal of a timeline, you may never hit it. So understanding what that looks like for you, maybe you have a lot going on at a certain time in your life, and maybe those timelines are a little bit longer, or you're really trying to accelerate, and so you shorten those timelines. But really establishing, I'm going to learn this topic by this time, and maybe I'm going to read a couple of books that have been recommended by my network, and then also setting those thresholds. So of course you don't want to overwork yourself. You want to be able to balance your time for mastering your skills and learning new skills and networking and establishing relationships in your community. And so you have to set those thresholds as well. For me, last year, a goal of mine was to better understand venture capital. And so I got recommended books by a couple of people who are in that area that I highly respect and that I follow. And I got those recommendations from them. I bought the audiobooks, and it was a goal of mine to be able to understand that field a bit better. And so my goal was to finish those 2 books in 2 months and give myself that time to be able to learn a new skill and kind of experiment with that and see if that was something I was more interested in understanding. This topic is kind of near and dear to my heart because I have experienced a ton of challenges with dependencies and constraints. And what I mean by this is there's typically this perception of a career path. And so when you have somebody who's more advanced in your career that's mentoring you, or that's just kind of your superior in whatever context that you're in, they may have a very specific perception of what a career path looks like because that's what they experienced. And I would highly recommend everyone to kind of shape their own perspective and opinions about that, because it can really hold you back from what you want to do. So if someone's telling you that you have to know this before you can move forward or before you can advance, or here are the set of criteria that you need to excel, that's not necessarily the case. And so I would highly recommend you to kind of question everything. And, maybe that worked for them, or maybe that was their situation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that for you. And that can really hold people back. And so I highly recommend that you understand what are the real requirements for accomplishing my goal. Can I do some additional research to maybe get more perspectives from more people? And then question, what people are telling you you should do. Because at the end of the day, you need to kind of form your own opinion about that and determine what those dependencies truly are and what those constraints are. The other aspect of this is timing. Timing can be a big constraint for you. Just because an opportunity seems like it's going to be very beneficial for your career, it doesn't necessarily mean that it times up well. And if you meet anybody who's successful, they'll tell you that there have been experiences of their own where it seemed like a great opportunity, but the timing was off. I've worked at quite a few startups. They change very quickly. And so making sure that my goals align with what the startup needs is always important. And sometimes that alignment shifts and the environment you're in changes or your goals shift. And understanding what that alignment looks like, if the timing is right, is also key. That is definitely a constraint. The other aspect of timing is time management, which always seems like a really easy thing to tackle, but is like the hardest thing actually for me to try to learn and grasp and manage. And so there was a mentor of mine who had given me a really great kind of framework to think about and better manage my time, because I tried to do about 1 million things at once. And that framework was the 3 Ds: do, delegate, and drop. And so I want you all to kind of think about a time where you felt overworked, or you thought maybe, your wheels were spinning and you weren't getting anywhere. Were there aspects of what you were working on that you could have delegated to someone else, or maybe have dropped in retrospect? And so moving forward, getting that exercise down of here's all the things that I have to do. Here's what I've brought into my list of tasks to accomplish based off of my goals. Here are the priorities for me on those goals that I want to accomplish in the immediate term with the timeline I've established. And here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to delegate if I can. And here's what I'm not going to do. There's a lot of things out there saying basically that it is harder to say no to opportunities, but more important. Because if you say yes to everything, then you're going to be spread really thin, and it's going to be really challenging for you to truly get depth and accomplish something quickly. And so I highly recommend practicing time management, especially as you advance your career. You're going to get more opportunities, or you might be faced with more opportunities, and it's going to get more and more challenging for you to say yes or no. But being able to say no is really important. And a lot of people in my network I've heard have struggled with this same concept. There's definitely a right way to say no as well. And I honestly respect people who say no, especially if I've offered somebody an opportunity and they say, no, this is not a good time for me. You know, that's, to me, they've got really good time management skills and they understand what their goals are. The next topic I want to talk about is a feasibility assessment. And so I've put a couple of areas to focus on in this aspect. So there's environment, goals, guidance, and growth. And so when you think about your environment, is it really conducive to you accomplishing your goals? Are you going to be given the opportunities, or are you going to be able to seek out opportunities and try to pursue them? And that's really kind of where you've decided to work and what communities you're in. Is the environment a healthy environment for you? Do you feel like you can be productive? And again, environments change. And so reevaluating that consistently is super important. And I'll talk about an example in which an environment changed for me and I had to completely kind of reevaluate. And of course, your goals. Is it conducive to accomplishing the goals that you've set for yourself? Guidance. This is super important. As someone who's trying to master a skill, you always think about this concept of like apprenticeship and having someone there who has that experience and who has mastered a skill that you want to develop. Being able to learn from people like that is extraordinarily important. And surrounding yourself with people who are accomplished in those areas will be extremely beneficial to you. So you can kind of watch them basically apply that skill over and over and over again. Working at startups, it's actually helped me immensely in seeing how other founders and CEOs are navigating very challenging situations and what kind of decisions they're making. I get to see the outcomes of those decisions. And that has been very helpful for me to start my own companies. And then growth. Are you going to be challenged? Are you going to be a little uncomfortable, right? Because we can't grow unless we're uncomfortable. We can't grow if we don't have something that is outside of our wheelhouse or outside of the bounds in which we have been applying our skills before. And if you are in an environment where you're not given those opportunities to grow and to try new things, you may find that you get to a standstill. And so you need to understand kind of the feasibility of all of these different aspects when you're evaluating opportunities and while you're in an opportunity, because there are variables that will change along the way. And so continuing to understand, does this align with what I want to do and what my goals are, is very important. And then making that hard decision, if it's not, to adjust. Maybe it's just getting a different position in a different department. Maybe it's getting a mentor to help guide you. Maybe it's joining a few other communities to try to find a broader network of something that you're focused on. Maybe it's a new job altogether. That is something that you need to continuously evaluate. Or maybe it's just getting on a different project. You don't have to necessarily fundamentally change everything, but being able to hone in on those very specific aspects in which it's not conducive to accomplishing your goals is going to be very helpful in your process to determine what to do next. So I want to tell you all a story of an experience that I had in which environment was no longer serving me. I was at a startup company that fortunately put me in front of a lot of incredible people. I met very, very talented individuals and very accomplished individuals. And it was a really life-changing, career-changing experience for me. And I learned a ton. I was constantly outside of my comfort zone. I was constantly learning new things. I was growing a ton in a bunch of different directions. But because it is a startup, things change and they shift. And so this is, you might be thinking, why is she showing us kind of like this hierarchy view? When I was there, I started to notice kind of a sense of a cultural shift. And that's extremely important to pick up on because, again, your environment will determine how productive you can be in it. And sometimes you can change it and sometimes you can't. And so, there's always a thought within my mind is, can I do something to change this and fix this, right? And so what I'm showing you right now is this org chart that I created at this company, which showed, I color-coded everyone by their gender because I wanted to highlight the fact that there were not a lot of women in this organization, and the women that were there were not in leadership positions. And so there was kind of this cultural component of the company that started to form. And as the company grows, if that's not addressed early on, it can continue to grow in that direction, right? And so when you think about a startup, you think about people who start the company, they kind of determine the culture. And then as it grows, they start to select people in their own networks. And so as that happens, they have to hire. And so they think about, okay, I've worked with this person before, maybe they would be really good in this position that we're hiring for. And you've got really low costs around hiring. And so what ends up happening is the company starts to grow and be formed in a way that is rather non-diverse if your networks are rather non-diverse. And so the company starts to look and reflect more and more of what it started out as, if you don't put any intention behind that. And so I wanted to show that in some kind of visual way to say, if we focus on this and put some emphasis on this early on, we can start to shift what that culture looks like and make sure that we are having a diversity of thought and backgrounds and perspective as we're starting to build out these products that we're building. And to me, that really mattered because you can't possibly build elegant products and products that serve everyone if you don't have a diverse group or team behind kind of the design components of it. And obviously this is a really hard problem to solve for some organizations. So the big emphasis here is that culture mattered to me, and the environment shifted and grew in a way that wasn't serving my needs anymore or my goals. And so I had a tough decision to make. If that wasn't going to change, that's something that I needed to reflect on and adjust. And the other aspect of that too is understanding what your community and your network and the diversity of your network looks like. Because as you start to build things or you start to bring people into positions, that will matter. And so that was also kind of a wake-up call to me as well, to reflect on my own network and my own community and figure out if my own community was diverse. And I started to find and seek out communities and be a part of new communities because of that as well. So definitely something that I had to continue to understand and evaluate as I was navigating my own goals within that environment. And then of course, managing your risks. So earlier I had talked to you about the power of your community and your network. This is a huge piece of it. When you decide to take really risky moves in your career, the more strong and broad your network is, the less risk associated to those moves that occurs. So you basically can rely on your network for advice, feedback, connections, introductions, potentially to clients if you're starting your own business. That becomes very, very, very valuable in those moments. So when you start to think about making different career moves and the risk associated to that, understand and calculate those risks, research, do your education, ask for people's advice and perspective on those decisions that you're trying to make. And de-risk it from that perspective so that you can understand more about what it is you're doing. In addition to that, maintain and establish very strong relationships with people who you respect and who will bring value to you, and inevitably you can bring back value to them. And so managing your risks are definitely going to be a huge aspect of your career over time. There's always risk associated to changing jobs or changing positions or taking promotions. And so understanding what that means is going to be very helpful in your ability to be more confident to make that jump. And finally, I wanted to talk about experimenting with intention. It is totally okay to shift and make different decisions in your career. You don't have to stick to one path. Especially in technology, there are so many kind of derivatives of topics that you can dive into, and experimenting with intention is going to be really important because you want to continue to assess whether or not you are in the position that you want to be in and working on the types of projects that you want to be working on. And so being able to think about, if you are taking a new position, what goals do I want to accomplish with this position? Is this position going to help me establish my sales skills better, establish my customer service skills better? Will this skill enable me to learn more technical concepts and apply them? And how does that align with the goals that I've set for myself? This will be very helpful when you're trying to evaluate all the different jobs out there, the culture, the teams that you will be a part of, and just doing that with extreme intention will also help you land jobs, because people can pick up on the fact that you've been very thoughtful about what value you can bring that job and what that job can bring to your career as well. And so experimenting is great. You should do that within your career and learn new topics and try to apply them to different things, but do it with intention. Just like you would any experiment in technology, running A/B tests and figuring out what the goal is that you want to accomplish. And with that, I am really excited to interact with all of you. Hopefully you picked up something in this talk that you can apply, directly to your own career. Thinking about whiteboarding and architecting all of these awesome, concepts and designs in technology, it's really kind of a similar topic to thinking about your own career and what you want to do within technology. So I highly encourage you all to maybe do some exercises afterwards and potentially apply some of these concepts and think about, what are your goals? What are your timelines? Are you putting enough emphasis and value into your own community and your own network? So if you have questions, let me know. I'm around to answer them.